64 Tacos Podcasts presents Is This Song Good? This is episode 16. Patti Smith, Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Is This Song Good? We're kind of starting a new season with a new theme here this time around. What we've decided to do is, rather than us try and find songs that none of us have heard of, we've chosen to find cover songs of songs that we like and discuss which version of the song we like better and any other thoughts we may have on it. This time around, we're doing the Patti Smith cover of the Nirvana song Smells Like Teen Spirit. So what did you guys think of this one?
I really liked it. I liked that it didn't sound very much at all like the original, which is kind of a nice switch up. Sometimes it's fun to hear a just like a really great version of a song you like that sounds roughly the same but slightly different. But I think it's a little more interesting when you just do something different with it. So like the whole banjo-y country sort of like folky thing was cool. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. It's interesting, and that's kind of more important. Makes it more listenable that she put in like a big chunk of her own sort of writing in the sort of like 2/3 of the way through the song. And it's really good writing. It felt more natural to her when she was delivering it, rather than delivering, the sort of very simple phrasing from the Nirvana version. Mm-hmm. But I'm not yet sure whether that's helps the song or not. Because it's very different in sort of like the number of syllables and the type of descriptors used and stuff. But it made it feel more her own, so I think it's probably a good thing that she tossed that wrinkle in. So yeah, I thought it was. I think its greatest virtue is that it's a very different reimagining of the song, and I think what's cool about it is it sort of makes you realize that the song's lyrics, the original lyrics, the Kurt Cobain lyrics, are almost a little goofy. It's a little bit of a joke song with a reference to like deodorant and stuff. It's not really like the subject matter is, entirely funny or anything, but when you have someone else delivering it in a different context, it sort of makes you really rethink about the lyrics again, especially because she like enunciates them and makes them very clear rather than sort of like, as Weird Al famously sort of parodied, it's all kind of, marbles in my mouth. You can't tell what he's saying half the time on the original recording. But yeah, I thought it was really cool because it was very, very different and it sort of shed new light onto the song.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Patti Smith. I mean, I've heard the name and I'm sure there's some songs that she's done that I've heard before. But when I was listening to this cover, I was thinking, oh, is this like a, bluegrass country band? And then I went and did the research and it's like, oh no, she's more punk rock. So it was definitely out there. And I guess it was part of an album of covers, and there's a bunch of other covers on there. And yeah, I also liked the bluegrassy country, banjo feel of it. And I think the only thing for me that's kind of like the downside is the extended length that it's like 6 minutes long. It feels like it kind of goes on for too long. And like you were talking about the sort of spoken word part that she added in there, I could go either way. I mean, on one side, I definitely agree with you that it adds like her own take to it. And it's very, it gives it a different, it was like she was trying to capture the essence of the angst, I think, of the grunge period. But on the other hand, it does feel like it extends it out unnecessarily and gives it a little too much extra space to it. So I'm kind of on the fence. Like,
what it reminds me of? Sorry to talk again before you've gotten in here, Dave, and cut you off, Zach. But I heard a cover of I don't think we're gonna do this one or anything, but I heard a cover of a Rage Against the Machine song by Denzel Curry, who's a rapper, and
Oh yeah.
he tossed a verse of his own into the cover, and it was like, does this work? Like, it's much more. It's this weird thing too, where suddenly a verse sounds really natural to the performer, and it makes you almost think about how the thing you weren't thinking before, which is, oh yeah, it was a little bit weird when they were singing before. I didn't notice it, but now I'm like, oh well, that came out really natural, and then the other stuff is a little more like, I don't know, it doesn't fit them quite as well as their own stuff, which makes sense. But I agree. I thought it was interesting because it was different, but I'm not sure. Would it be better if you just chop that minute off, and sort of tighten it down? It might be. I'd be curious to hear that edit version. But anyway,
I don't think it would be. I think adding her little her piece there makes it her own song, and I thought it was brilliant when I first went through the song and got to that point. I was like, oh my gosh, it had been a pretty good cover in my opinion. They did the thing where she took the song, made it her own, by not playing the exact same instruments and the exact same notes at the exact same time and the exact same rhythm. But then on top of that, she added her own lyrics, which I think is very brave and very bold, and could easily backfire. But I think she did capture the essence of the song with what she wrote in conjunction to the original lyrics. So I thought that was a very good addition for me anyway.
It makes it a really distinctive cover, so that definitely is voices it in its favor.
Yep. So Zach, we both interrupted you now.
No, well, yeah, I was pretty close to the end of what I was saying anyway. I think what it comes down to for me is, would I do like the cover. I do like what she's doing with it. But would I want to listen to this over the original? I don't think so. It's not like, and that's partly because, my bias of the original, because I grew up with that and it has such a special place for me. But yeah,
Smells Like Teen Spirit defined our generation. I mean, the whole notion of the song ending pretty much with "oh well, whatever, never mind." I mean, that's kind of the mantra of kids who grew up in the 90s
and screaming.
It didn't quite work out.
Yeah, screaming whatever a denial over squalling guitars and no, right. You're right, and that's the thing. We should maybe talk a little about the original song too. It sort of lost a little bit of its punch over overexposure in it being like the grunge anthem at the time. In 91 when it came out. But it's one of those songs where, like, when Nirvana first came out, we would have been, Dave and I would have been 12. You were a little bit younger, right, Zach? But for you, it was probably a thing you came on to as you started listening to the radio when you were, a little bit later in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like 9 or 10.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I heard Nirvana, it was like almost a little too much for me because I was 12. I was like, oh, I don't know. But then by the time I was like getting into high school in a year or two, then, I was all in on it. And I loved that. Well, honestly, I didn't get that album right away. It was, I got In Utero, Incesticide, and The Unplugged before I got Nevermind. And I think the only thing, negative stuff you can say about that song is that it was played so much, and I think sometimes these covers help you appreciate the original song again by hearing it in a different context. It makes you be like, oh yeah, this is a great song. But yeah, I do think the original is very good. It just suffered from overexposure at the time, but I still think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's one of the classics. Like Zach said, it defines our generation. And the lyrics may seem a little goofy on the surface, like you were saying, Dan. But if you and this is one thing that I liked about the Patti Smith version is you can actually listen to the lyrics and kind of get a good feel for what they mean. And nothing against Kurt Cobain, he is an incredible performer, I'm sure.
Well,
But
I was reading some of the background for different recordings because Butch Vig, the producer, worked with Kurt a lot,
Mhm.
Kurt Cobain,
Yep.
and he said in like an interview that he almost could never get Kurt to do a second take on vocals.
really,
Yeah, so a lot of what you hear is just Kurt doing his thing and then
yeah,
going off and doing something else. And so I thought that was kind of
that's
interesting because he
that's kind
just,
of cool.
yeah.
I
And as far as the song title is concerned, I don't think he knew, or if he did, he didn't really care that it was about deodorant. It was something that another band member from like a punk band wrote and spray paint or something on a wall that said that Kurt smells like Teen Spirit. And he saw that and he thought it was hilarious and loved it and decided to use it for his song title.
Yeah, he thought it was some sort of like my memory of the story is that he thought it was some sort of like social statement, and he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting."
Yeah.
And then she was like, "No,
Right.
no, it's it's
No,
just deodorant."
it was deodorant.
which is funny. But what's great is I'm sure he knew that before the album came out, but he's like, "No,
Yeah.
that's great. That's fine. I don't care. Like that."
Yeah.
That captures something I'm trying to say, so I don't care. But yeah, Kurt Cobain loved to use like sort of like confrontational and strange like language in his lyrics, I think. And I think sometimes it can be off-putting, but Nirvana loved to be off-putting. They weren't trying to. I don't know if it was trying to fight against their massive fame, but also just built into his personality. He didn't mind just in his guitar playing, in his singing, and in his lyrics. He was just like, I'm going to get right in your face, and maybe I don't know if you'll just feel uncomfortable or you'll hate this, but you're gonna feel something. Like you're not gonna not feel something, right? So I think that's one of the things that's great about that song. It is weird that I mean, it's such a hooky song that it kind of makes sense, but it is a little bit weird that was such a huge hit, and like sort of like the first like bomb dropped and like the like big bomb in the whole grunge movement was that song. It's just really interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a great song, and I do really appreciate this Patti Smith version of it too. It's just for its difference and her unique take on something that I grew up loving so much. Like it could have very easily just been the kind of thing where, no, you just ruined one of my favorite songs from my childhood.
Yep.
But I think she did a great job with it, taking it and making it her own. I mean, obviously, she's an incredible musician.
Yeah.
Like Zach said, I'm not a big fan of hers. I don't know a ton of her stuff, but she's got a long history in the music industry. So
yeah, she's very. From what I hear,
surprise.
she's really influential, and I think there was another cover of hers that's kind of famous. It's the 10,000 Maniacs cover of "Because the Night." That's probably one that you know. But yeah, she was definitely really influential, like in 70s and 80s and like the New York scene. And I've never really gotten into her personally, but what's interesting too is that she made it her own by not really sounding much like herself in a way, and or at least what people sort of associate with her. But when she goes into her own verse, it definitely, you can feel the sort of, it feels kind of right. But yeah, I think overall very good because it was different. I wouldn't necessarily go choose like seek it out like very specifically, but if I would totally be good with tossing on a playlist and having it pop up. It'd be great on a covers playlist because it's really interesting and different, but familiar at the same time.
Yep. I completely agree. So yeah, I think that now would be a good time to vote. Is this song good? For me, yes, it's a yes. The cover is good. Not as good as the original, probably not. I don't know that anyone would be able to cover this song and make me think it's better than the original, but I definitely enjoy it.
Yeah, I would say this cover is good, but yeah, I probably prefer the original, but this is a very good cover.
I agree.
All right, so next week we're doing a song that you picked, Dan. Why don't you remind us what that is?
So the original is Al Green's "Take Me to the River," and the cover is the Talking Heads version.
All right, so look for that next week.
I caught it on audio